Hello everyone and welcome to Sci-Fi Zone, where we celebrate science fiction movies and TV shows from the past, the present and the future. I'm here today with Claire and H, and we're in the wonderful store of alternate worlds. It's very exciting stuff. In the past, we've actually been discussing about how we've made a drinking game out of some of the things that we've been saying on this show. So whenever I say how good is that, you take a swig. Whenever Claire says that she loves time travel, you take 2 swigs. She hasn't said it a lot in recent times, so some people out there are feeling a little bit on the parched side.
Sorry.
And had MPS been here, whenever he does a quote in a funny voice, you definitely take a good swig for that. But the question I had to ask is, what exactly would you be drinking in the science fiction universe? Now we know in Star Wars, of course, blue milk is the go. Earl Grey tea hot if you're a Picard fan. A bit of Aractogino, which is Klingon coffee from Deep Space Nine. If you're a Babylon 5 fan, the Bravade. Oh, you've got to have that, don't you? And of course, if you're a Dune fan, you would drink water. Actually, that's actually a very, very good segue into what we want to discuss now. They're making a new Dune movie. Can you believe it? Have you heard anything about the Dune movie that's in production at the moment?
Director Denis Villeneuve, who was responsible for Arrival and Blade Runner 2049.
My question is, why are they doing it? The thing with Dune is that the story is generally a miserable, unhappy story. No one has a good time. There's no humour in it whatsoever. And it's one of those things where if you haven't read the book, it's actually very, very hard to completely understand. And a good example of that is that in most movies, even whether it's sci-fi or not sci-fi, you generally get 3 factions: the good guys, the bad guys, and somewhere in the middle. With Dune, there are at least 6 factions. You got House Atreides, House Harkonnen, House Corrino, which is the Sardaukar, which is the Emperor. You got the Fremen, the Bene Gesserit, and you got the Spacing Guild. So for most people who've never read the books, it is an absolute mind spinner and a half. And I have to wonder if it's actually the reason why for doing it in the first place.
Well, I don't know. One of the reasons I think I would want to make it now would be the technology we have gives us the ability to make those scenes and those creatures just amazing. The sandworms, can you imagine how we could do it now?
Yeah, see, the thing is, you can make the production values better, but the story is still very complicated to deal with. And that, in fact, funnily enough, with the movie made in 1984, even Raffaella de Laurentiis was saying that they had to be very careful with how their sandworms looked, because they said, and she actually quoted this in saying that they could be making the most expensive porno movie of all time because the sandworms, they look phallic and not at all appealing, and you can't make a worm look good. It's the old joke, you can put a tuxedo on a donkey, but it's still a donkey. So
I think Carlos Rambaldi was the creature expert who did the sandworms for 1984 Dune. I mean, responsible for E.T. and other things. And I thought for the time, it was very well done. I mean, the production values of the 1984 Dune, although it fiddled with the story a bit in different ways, the look of it in that sort of retro Russian Empire sort of look, it was an interesting move to portray it that way.
It worked really well.
It worked really well. The costuming, the look, that sort of...
But I still come back to the same problem. The original, like in the 84 version, like Star Wars, you get the opening crawl, right? It sets the scene. In the 84 version of Dune, you had Princess Ulan having to explain everything on camera. It's just to say to the audience, hey, this is what's going on. This is this group, this group, this group. This is the spice. This is Arrakis, whatever else. And in fact, her scene was so long, they actually faded her in and out to try and maintain the interest. And by the time she'd finished, the audience was completely lost. And I can't see why this would be any different for people who haven't read the book and don't understand what's going on.
They're splitting it into 2 movies. The new one is only going to be the first half of the book, and then, assuming the success of that, they get to do it. So they're not going to have to rush through the important storylines. I think they've got time, if they do it as 2 movies, to bring the audience along with them and get them involved in the story. I mean, yes, it is complicated, but I think in the hands of a good director and scriptwriter, they can convey a lot of that complexity. I mean, the mini-series, which they did, again, because they split it over a mini-series, they had more time to tell the story and got, I think, a more accurate representation of the book than perhaps they did with the 1984 version.
See, I think as a science fiction story, it is too science fiction-y for the average person on the street to understand and to grasp. It is a lot to absorb.
Actually,
It's a funny term because it's definitely not Hollywood by any stretch of the imagination. And if a person says, "Look, I just want to switch my brain off and be entertained," it isn't going to work.
This is not the movie to watch.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Obviously, people who've read the books will dial into it, but it's a question of those out in the street, in the public, who will be seeing it for the first time, saying, "Well, okay, I'm giving it a go." I agree with you. I think the production values will look really, really good. The issue with the sandworms, all that will be resolved, but it's a question of whether people can still dial into the story.
Yeah, so
Well,
I mean, people will expect liberties to be taken, I
Yep.
think, but it'll be interesting to see how far they go in that direction, and particularly given that they've now got 2 movies to play with
Yeah.
rather than
they
just
can
one.
spread it out at
Yeah.
least this time.
It'll be very interesting to see how it goes. What can I say? So, and how can this be? Because he is the Kwisatz Haderach. Oh, you got to love those lines. Absolutely fantastic. So while we think about what kind of spice we should be taking, because it does turn your eyes blue, so keep that in mind. We'll take a break and we will be back after these messages.
Alternate Worlds has been specialising in comics and collectibles for over 40 years, with a back issue collection of over 500,000 comics covering the golden age right through to latest releases, including signed and slabbed gems. They also have an enormous graphic novel collection, one of the largest ranges of manga in the country, as well as toys, statues and pops, and new items are arriving every Wednesday. Each month, Alternate Worlds hosts its own premium comic day, where all the rare treasures are put on display for inspection and purchase. The store also runs regular tournaments and competitions for both comic and gaming fans. And for local and interstate and international buyers, the Alternate Worlds website features their complete range of products, so whether you come in online or in store, visit them soon.
Welcome back. This could be a very interesting topic for conversation, a little bit controversial, potentially, you just never know. I was watching some science fiction movies recently from the last century, and one of the things that I picked up on was the fact that there are a lot of iconic quotes from those movies. So without putting in any of the inflections from the actors, if you were to say, "E.T. phone home," "Hasta la vista baby," even "Multipass," most people out there know exactly what those movies are.
Yep.
Now, judging apples for apples, let's just work from 1980 to 1999, from 2000 to 2019. For whatever reason, the last 20 years, well, you say 20 years, quotes for movies are not that common or not that memorable, and I'm just curious to know why.
I think part of it is because there are so many movies, our attention is much more divided than it used to be, potentially. I don't think there are none. I think there are definitely some.
But they're not memorable for some reason. That's the
Well,
thing.
Things like I Am Groot. Everyone knows where that's from.
I
So
agree with you.
It
And
does happen.
like when you're talking about the Avengers movies, like there's 21 movies, and yet there are almost more quotes that come out of one film from the 20th century than they do out of those 21 movies. And I don't understand why that is. Because no one seems to sort of like remember them or reference them at any point.
I mean, is it something to do with the scriptwriters today? I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
You've got those, for some reason it always seems to be Arnie movies that you're getting most
A
of the
lot of
quotes
them.
out
Yeah,
of.
there are
A lot
a
of
fair
them
bit.
are.
Yeah, get to
But
the
is
chopper.
it-
Yeah.
And
I
part
mean,
of
is-
that's, so part of the Arnie thing is probably the accent
The
really
inflection.
stands out. The way it's said is quite,
I think it's modern day society. I think it's to do with the internet, and I think it has to do with social media
Yeah.
and the fact that people aren't as focused as they once
the
was.
attention span isn't there. People
Yeah.
don't remember things like that as much as they used to, I think.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was getting at when I was
Yeah.
first saying there's a lot more of it out there. You have a lot more access to things that you haven't, like you know more about movies that you haven't even seen because of all the advertising. It's quite a different world.
And
now.
you actually mentioned like I Am Groot, right? That is a very, very famous one, but it's repeated over and over and over and over within the movie. Now, if he had just said I Am Groot once and once only, would it have still had the same impact?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Actually, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and I can't work it out. It's kind of weird because when you do watch movies from the last century, you just remember them. Even if someone like our photographer here, he had it like yesterday. This is actually true. While we're setting up everything, all our cameras here, he was doing something and he just goes no, and I knew straight away that was from RoboCop. How? I mean, that says a lot about me.
So
doesn't
I didn't
it?
know that one.
But a lot of people out there probably would. But I don't know. I think that the way the modern world is, we've actually lost something really significant from watching our favourite movies and even TV shows, and that is the quote, the famous quote.
I don't know. It's it's a good question, and I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
I think H is onto something when he talks about script writers.
Script writing.
That
Yes.
was-
I mean, we don't seem to be. I mean, I am Groot, as you said, but think of the rest of those 20 odd Marvel movies. Apart from I Am Groot, can we come up? Is there a quote that is synonymous with Iron Man?
Only one, I'm Iron Man. And that was the last line of the movie. So, and that was it. And the only other one I could think of, off the top of my head, was Hulk Smash. And that was it.
Actually,
Yeah.
no, give another one. Captain America, I got that. As in, I got that reference.
Yeah.
But that's, again, they're not the memorable ones.
No.
I mean,
and saying I got that doesn't necessarily
no,
immediately make
and
you
some
think
of the
that
other
movie.
quotes are quite emotionally laden. The "Get away from her, you bitch" is, I mean, that
Yeah.
really, in Aliens, that's sort of like, you can
Yeah.
hear the audience in the background going, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't get the quotes, I think, that fire up the audience
Yeah.
Maybe-
as much now.
Yeah, but do you think maybe it's because movies are a little bit more sanitized in terms of emotion? I've only just thought that, so I could be completely
no, actually,
wrong.
that's...
But what you said about there being an emotional charge in a lot of those ones, like Get Away From Here, that's a really emotional moment, and you don't seem to get as many of those. I mean, you get the thing where they play the music that makes you feel that tells you how you're supposed to
The feel, yep.
But the way the stories are told and the build up to that point and those sorts of to that emotional point, those sorts of things don't seem to be as intense as they used to be. Maybe it's our age. Maybe it's...
I actually do think that has something to do with it because we are from a certain generation,
Yeah.
and you'd need to ask younger people as to what they think.
Yeah.
And like the ones that I mentioned, they may go, I've never heard of those before. And so, yeah, you would have to ask younger people as to whether they'd say, oh, yeah, I know all these quotes from movies in the past 20 years. But I would be surprised if that's actually the case. So,
Yeah, and a lot of what's shared, it's on social media, and it's not as.
I mean, are people looking more for memes?
Yeah, well, and
is
that's
it more
that's
memes
kind of
that
what I
are
was trying
coming
to
out
think.
of films rather than quotes coming out of films
Oh,
now?
yeah, potentially.
You know, is that the replacement for the quote? Can you generate a meme for this film?
Yeah, and the problem is, though, the memes don't always actually have much to do with the movie. They use an image or they use a line, but they completely change the context, and that's what makes the meme more interesting and more popular. And that perhaps takes away from this thing that we're talking about, where you do specifically connect that line with that movie.
Yeah.
Maybe.
one thing's for sure, if you just say the word deadpan, you, the audience, will put in the inflection. So if I just say big bada boom, have you just gone, oh, big bada boom? You can't help it, can you? It just happens. So, but if you do happen to know some quotes and you want to say, hey, that we're wrong, by all means, leave some comments in the
Post-
YouTube section
yeah.
and just have a go at us and say, you're completely wrong.
Well,
Yeah.
I was all ready to argue because the way this topic was originally described was there are no.
Oh, no.
quotes.
There are some,
And
but
there are some.
but they're few and far between,
Yeah.
and which is really quite sad. And I was struggling, and I was thinking, I was looking at all these movies and thinking, I just can't think of anything. You can even look at a movie and go, oh yeah, I've seen it, but I don't remember anything from it in terms of dialogue.
Yeah.
So
Actually, would you say with the modern movies where you're saying, I don't remember as much,
That
do
could
you
be
think
mine.
do you think that the modern movies maybe are not making as much impact
yeah, I would
as
agree
those
with that.
earlier ones?
I would agree with that. Yes.
It's also possible that we've watched those old movies a lot more times than we've seen the new ones.
True,
Most of those 21
But I would
Marvel movies
argue,
I've only seen once.
I would argue that sometimes you actually can know a quote from a movie you've never even seen.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You
that's
just
true.
know it because it's just part of not pop culture, but just sort of like
Well, yeah, pop culture.
yeah,
Mm,
we'd have to
popular
know
Pop culture
the- yeah.
zeitgeist.
And
Yeah.
you can say, oh yeah, I know the quote from that film, but I've never actually seen the movie. So so if you've seen the movie and you still can't remember anything from it, then that's actually a bit of a worry. So maybe with some new movies coming out, some of the writers, I agree with you, will think, I've got to think of some iconic lines that people will remember for generations to come. So I'm just going to read out a couple of quotes now that we're finishing off. Do you know this movie? No matter where you go, there you are. You'll know that.
I don't.
No, it's from
Yep.
Buckaroo Banzai.
Buckaroo Banzai.
1 point. Now let's put in some. Actually, let's chuck in some inflections. 1.21 gigawatts. There we go. And now, see if you do know this one. I've come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
They live.
Oh, golly. And of course, we were talking about RoboCop earlier. Dead or alive, you're coming with me. And this is a bit more subtle. Kuritsa. Do you remember this one?
Oh God, I remember it.
Kuritsa. It's actually mentioned multiple times. It's the movie 2010. It's actually chicken in Russian. So how good is that? And just finally, bugs! So there we go, straight out of Starship Troopers. There you go. How exciting is that? All right, so we'll wrap that up. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell for all the latest updates and exciting things that are going on around the place. Next week, we're going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery. How exciting is that? So in the interim, make sure you do as the Red Angel does and stay in the zone. All right, see you next time. Bye for now.